Okay, let's do this. We're gonna talk about the weak links. Now, I had done a previous presentation a year or so ago about the weak links, and what do you think I'm talking about when I say weak links? If you're working at a place, like when I worked at the Ford dealership for 15 years over there, and I saw the same kind of cars coming through there day after day after day, I typically knew when I pulled a particular trouble code or something what was wrong with that particular kind of car, because that's usually what it was. I knew what tests to do to find out, you know, push, pull, snap, click, yep, that's bad, pop it on there, get it through, get it out. And basically, your money is made in this business by getting it out of there and getting it done and getting it out, getting it done and getting it out. That particular service bay is needing to produce a certain amount of labor time each and every, like, see it would be a horror story for any shop to have a vehicle on the lift as long as some wind up being on there and here whenever we got people that for whatever reason can't come or whatever. But whenever you can get that thing knocked out quick, I always want to look at the book time and I want to see if this job pays 2.5 hours, I want to be through with it in like 1.5 hours, and then I want to go ahead and draw my next ticket. Some of the guys, whenever they would get really good at it, they would do a 12-hour job in the morning between 8 and 12. I mean, you like some of the recall stuff, if you do a lot of recalls, you can knock out a 12-hour job, you know, legitimately between 8 and noon. And the smart thing to do is to go ahead and after dinner start drawing more tickets, and at the end of the week you can have, I've seen some of them guys make 120 hours in a week. And this is money they earned, you know, because the dealership, see, they get paid their full labor rate and you get paid your percentage of it and all that. But this is question number 1 for your sheet over there. And do not show any of these other latecomers your answers. You know, they're going to need to, you know, come up with this on their own. An engine's been removed from a high mileage rear wheel drive vehicle and resealed for several serious oil leaks. After the engine is reinstalled and started, a transmission fluid leak appears from the bell housing area. Technician A says the front pump, torque converter, seal was probably damaged during the repair. Technician B says the PCV system needs to be checked since it might have caused the engine oil leaks. Who is correct?
Technician,
What do you think?
right?
Both.
Weigh in on it. What do you think?
Both,
Both. Why both?
because they could both be right.
Yep.
But we don't think.
Okay.
I'm going with A because usually that's what happens when you pull a motor out. I'll put a torque converter seal in it.
Yep. Alrighty. You're right, but you're not totally right. Why would we suspect the PCV system to be a problem?
The only way that, how would that make the transmission leak?
It wouldn't, but look at the first repair. An engine's been removed from a high mileage rear wheel drive vehicle and resealed for several serious oil leaks. Several serious oil leaks. Got it? So if you've got several serious oil leaks, like if the valve covers are leaking and the timing cover's leaking and the balancer seal is blown, you know, the front seal, and the oil pan is leaking, and I've seen them like that. There was a truck that came in there when we first started doing work for the Coca-Cola bottling company on their vehicles. There was a little Chevy Astro van that came in there, and it was leaking oil from everywhere an engine could leak oil. And this guy pulled that motor out and he resealed it and he popped it back in there after he put all of the gaskets and everything on it. And then they brought it over there to me to, you know, check out the emissions and all that kind of stuff and make sure that the fuel trims were like they should have been. And I got to noticing as I was checking out the emission system that if you pull the closure hose from the valve cover that went up to the breather and you crank the engine up, there was a ton of pressure coming out of there because the vacuum line that was going to the PCV valve that was coming from under the throttle body was clogged up with carbon. Get you, each one of y'all needs one of those. And so it was clogged up with carbon, so the positive crankcase ventilation system wasn't working, and so it built pressure in the crankcase because all of that oil that was steaming through there had stopped up the crankcase filter too, and so it would build up pressure and build up pressure, and it would just start leaking from every seal. Now I got the throttle body off of it and cleaned all that junk out, but when you pull that vacuum line off that PCV valve, if it's got a PCV valve on it, it should sound like a hurricane. Shh, I mean, just screaming. And if you don't hardly feel any vacuum there, you're cruising for a bruise in there. So that's going to be a both, okay? Going to make that happen. All right, we're going to see who gets this thing right to begin with. The next one, the customer complains their gas pedal sticks at the top of the travel and pops loose as she continues to apply foot pressure on the pedal. And this problem is probably due to,
Hold on, like she's pressing it down.
she's going to put her foot on the gas and take off, and it feels like she's standing on a brick. And then all of a sudden it goes poof, and it pops loose. And it does that usually worse in the morning than any other time.
My dirty throttle body, I've had that happen before.
Yeah.
Dirty throttle body. And I knew one time about this person that lived across the road from a pond. And they put their vehicle in reverse to back out of the driveway. And they took off out of their driveway and they backed right on into the pond and they drowned. And nobody ever knew why they did that. But I just about would guarantee you it was because that throttle body was stuck. They put it in reverse and they started trying to take off. And when it popped loose, it took off. And when you're going backwards, it's throwing you against the gas pedal and you can't get off of it. And you just keep picking up speed because you keep picking up momentum if you've got a good strong engine. See how that thing, and the Audi car company had a bunch of people taking off backwards, running into stuff. Wasn't the car's fault. An independent insurance investigation, as I remember, found out that every one of those things where that Audi took off backwards and ran into something was driver error. They had their foot on the gas when they put it in reverse, and it was at fast idle. So what they started making us do, and we had to go back and retrofit a bunch of them, was fix it so you had to put your foot on the brake to take it out of gear.
Why do they have their foot on the gas?
Well, people just put their foot on the gas because that's what they're going to be using, so they just drop it in gear. Now you're used to putting your foot on the brake because you can't get it out of gear if you don't. And it has trained everybody, you know what I mean? All right, so a PO 401 code will probably be due to what? A sticking IAC, an always open canister purge valve, a small evaporative leak, or clogged EGR passages. PO 401.
What does that code even mean?
That code means that there's, that code means there's no EGR flow. That means that it's looking for EGR flow, it's opening the EGR valve and it's not seeing any flow. So what's it gonna be? Clogged EGR passages, and that is very, very common. Now on some of your little 4-cylinder Nissans, it's basically got a separate little EGR feed into each cylinder, and if all of those will clog up but one, then when EGR starts flowing, it'll make it misfire, and it'll probably throw like a PO 301 code. And you'll think, oh, I got coil, I got spark plugs or something like that, but what it amounts to, it's not getting any EGR in any one of the cylinders except the main one. You know what I mean? All right. I mean, except the one that's skipping. And I've seen that on Ford Windstars because they actually are set up with the 3.8 where they got a little 6mm hole feeding EGR into each cylinder, and every cylinder is supposed to get the same amount of everything. If one of them's getting a lot of EGR because all the rest of them are stopped up, that one will skip as soon as EGR. If you ever pull the hose off the EGR valve or whatever and it stops that, then start thinking about all of those passages being clogged except one if that's the way it's set up. A misfiring spark plug will cause the oxygen sensor to indicate what? Well, it indicates rich, lean, hot, or cool.
Rich,
Why?
because it's not burning.
What's the oxygen sensor smelling?
The raw fuel.
The exhaust.
Oxygen.
What? Who said that? Did you say oxygen?
I said oxygen.
That's smart. Okay, so it doesn't give a rip about fuel, does it? It doesn't say fuel sensor. You know, typically you've got an air fuel sensor, but still basically it's looking at oxygen levels in the exhaust. And so if you've got a cylinder that's misfiring, you've also got oxygen coming out of that cylinder that's not being used, and all that sensor is paying attention to is oxygen. So it's going to make it go lean initially. Now it will go back to the rich side because it's going to start putting more fuel in there to try to correct for what it perceives as a lean condition because of that misfire. That confuses a lot of people. I've sat in a lot of classes, and anytime the instructor asks a classroom full of mechanics like that, most of them will say rich because of the fuel. I said, wait a minute, the oxygen sensor couldn't care less about fuel. That's not even what it's smelling of. Got that? All right, don't forget to take notes too. You're supposed to put notes on the bottom of that page. All right, an air leak between the mass airflow sensor and the throttle body will cause what? Long fuel trim readings to correct to the positive, long fuel trim readings to correct to the negative, oxygen sensor failure, or canister purge failure. Not a trick question. Everybody needs to be familiar enough with fuel trims.
It's gonna have to do with the fuel trim then.
Y'all be familiar enough with them right now. Which way is it gonna go? If I've got an air leak between the mass airflow sensor and the throttle body,
It's gonna go lean.
all right. What do you mean it's gonna go lean? Is it gonna, you mean is it gonna correct for a lean condition? Or is it gonna correct for a rich condition?
It's gonna correct the positive.
It's gonna correct to the positive. Why?
Cause it show
Cause
up.
it ain't getting up there.
No, it's
Or
getting
thinks
too
it-
much air.
It thinks it ain't getting up.
Just,
Listen to him. It's underreporting the air because you have unmetered air. You've got air that's not being measured. Because every bit of the air that goes into that engine needs to go through the mass airflow. Why do you think the closure hose for the PCV valve comes around into the rubber hose that comes from the breather? Even the PCV air needs to be reported by the mass airflow. You got that? That's question number 5. All right, after undergoing major work in the body shop, a no start condition is being investigated, the PCM won't communicate with the scan tool, and there's no reference voltage present at any sensor. Technician A says the body shop may have damaged the PCM while welding body panels. Technician B says power and ground of the PCM should be checked. Whose idea should be pursued first?
they,
I do the power and ground thing, because you're not gonna know. Now, I had one here back when we used to have auto body here, a Dodge that came in here that was like a 98 model or something like that, that somebody had just practically totaled, and they did a whole bunch of work on it back there in auto body. And after they got through with it, it wouldn't start. And the guy, brought it over here for us to figure it out. He wouldn't talk to the scan tool, had everything it needed at the engine controller. Anytime you got an electronic component that's not working like it's supposed to, you want to see if you got good power and ground going to it. And you got good, terminal connections and all that. And I'm gonna look and see if I've got power and ground going to that thing. But what can you do to jump over that? Let's check to see if we have reference voltage at our throttle position sensor, and if we do, what do we know? We know the engine controller is awake, and we know it's able to produce 5 volts. If I don't have 5 volts there, and I've got no spark and no injector pulse, chances are, and you're not even hearing the fuel pump kick on, chances are that you got a dead engine controller. What I did on that one is I happened to have an engine controller that would plug into the same harness that came off of a Jeep that I had worked on. And the Jeep was doing some crazy stuff after you drove it 150 miles, and so I knew it would talk. And so am I gonna hurt that truck plugging the Jeep engine controller into the truck?
no.
I may hurt the engine controller plugging it into the vehicle, but I'm not gonna hurt that. So anyway, we put an engine controller on that one for $800 or something, I don't remember what it was, and we got that one fired up and going. All right, and so, what happened? Is that one there a bad pin? An engine's being investigated for an overheating problem. The engine is started after a 6-hour cold soak and allowed to run for 60 seconds. A 6-hour cold soak means it's been sitting there not running for 6 hours, right? A hissing sound of escaping pressure is heard when the radiator cap is removed after it runs for 60 seconds. What does that mean?
After it's removed.
Yeah, in other words, I'm gonna crank it up, I'm gonna let it run 60 seconds, I'm gonna shut it off. I take the radiator cap off and I hear shh.
It's
coming out.
got compression going into the radiator.
Compression going into the water jacket, which is making it into the radiator and all that. Now what you can do, if you wanna see which cylinder it's on, is you can pull every one of the spark plugs except for number 1, and make sure it's full of coolant, and I usually like to take the thermostat out, but you don't have to. Spin that sucker over and see if it disturbs the water. If it doesn't, move that plug to the next cylinder and see if it disturbs. And when you get to the one that causes the water to bounce and wiggle, then you got found the cylinder that's got the blown gasket.
Like, when I got my Mustang and didn't have no water in it, I put water in it, boiling smoke out, well, it stopped. Well, when it was cold in the morning times, you could run the crap out of it and blow water out of it.
Yeah.
But once it got hot, it wouldn't do it anymore. So I
Yeah.
put some liquid glass in it and run it, and it quit doing it.
Usually that liquid glass, if you're wanting a patch job, works pretty decent. There used to actually be some stuff that was liquid glass. Now they got a brand name of stuff that they call liquid glass for that. We got basically, one of the head gasket fire rings has been compromised, is what it amounts to. And the fire ring is this part right here that's supposed to take the pressure of that combustion, right? All right, a loose fuel filler cap will generally set what code?
Fuel.
I can't believe you guys don't have your codes memorized. How
I've
about a
seen this one
PO
several
450?
times, I just
A
can't
loose
remember it.
fuel fill like the cap that you take off, put gas in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That throws the code.
oh yeah. You'll throw this code right
On
here.
some vehicles, not like,
Now, I will tell you this, my Taurus has actually got a cap, I mean, a picture of the fuel filler cap, where whenever you crank it up, if you've forgotten to put the cap back on,
So
but the
it's not-
evaporative system catches that. So it's the PO 455 is what it is. Variable cam timing was originally used only for A, knock control, B, EGR control, C, cruise control, or D, catalyst monitoring.
not control,
How did it help with NOx control?
because it could change the timing. And if it like hurt a ping or fuel knock or something like that, it could retard the timing.
Well, you're half right. What they do is, what does EGR do? EGR captures some exhaust gas and, about 5% or whatever, and runs it back through there. As an inert gas, it keeps the combustion chamber temperature from getting above 2,500 degrees. You emission guys need to know this. And he was about to doze off over when I said that. But anyway, when I said, so basically what would happen, somebody got smart and says, why don't we just put variable cam timing on the exhaust camshaft? And it happened in 1995 when I started it. And let's just close the exhaust valves early and leave some of the exhaust gas in there instead of making it take the long way around. Worked just as well. Never gave any trouble as far as I knew. Now those were some sorry cars and they give other problems, but that part of them didn't give any trouble. Retarded cam timing and retarded ignition can both cause what? A, low engine vacuum. B, a rich air fuel mixture. C, late and hard transmission shifts. Or D, all of the above.
Hey,
Could happen to any of them. If you've got late cam timing and late, either one of those, late ignition timing or late cam timing, will both cause low engine vacuum. Now, if you're using a MAP sensor system and you put a aggressive camshaft in there, you trying to use a MAP sensor, what you're gonna wind up with is one that's running really rich when it's idling, but it does okay going down the road. Why is that?
Do what now?
I'm gonna put an over aggressive camshaft in my vehicle, one of those that, like Dustin and them put in their race car. You know, had
That
hunts and all
advance
that.
in time?
Huh?
That you don't advance in time?
No, you've got a not a mass airflow, but a MAP sensor, manifold pressure sensor, and the computer's using that as a speed density system to determine how much fuel to inject based on engine load. Whenever you got a cam in there, and you got an aggressive, lift and duration on your cam, you got low engine vacuum. When you got low engine vacuum, the engine controller has the idea that that's got a heavy load, it's gonna put more fuel in there. And so the only way to handle that is to, if you're using fuel injection, is to get away from the mass airflow and with the MAP sensor, put mass airflow on it. When you put mass airflow on it, all them problems go away.
or you could put a tune in it.
Yeah, you. Well, think about what you're saying though. Are you gonna tune it with your MAP sensor? How are you gonna tell it, your MAP sensor, what's accurate per engine load without affecting it at both ends?
You rewrite the software on it.
Yeah. Well, I understand that, but how are you gonna rewrite it? I mean, you gotta have ask Matt about that. Say, Matt, can you build a tune if somebody is gonna use a manifold absolute pressure sensor with an aggressive camshaft? Can you tune that so that it will idle good and still good going down the road? And see if he tells you. He's probably gonna say, no, that's too hard. What we're gonna do, there may be a way to do it, but it's gonna take a heck of a lot of tuning. All right. Now then, we're gonna talk about a weak link or two. What we got right here is this right here on them Chevrolet trucks that's got the CSFI system on them. What is this line right here? Come on, guys.
What is that on?
Huh?
What is that on?
This is on a CSFI, like a 2001 Chevrolet pickup, like that white Chevrolet we got out there.
It's either a heater hose or air.
These are the heater hoses over here.
Well, it's air.
Don't embarrass me, okay? Right here, what is this line? Somebody tell me.
Shear high pressure.
No, that's the low pressure, that's the suction line. Okay, so what happens to the suction line on a hot, humid day whenever you're running your air conditioner?
It frosts up.
And it doesn't just frost up, it actually drips water. Okay, so on a Chevrolet, what is basically right in this area, behind there?
The distributor
The distributor. What happens if you drip water on the distributor?
Skip.
That's not a plan, is it? That's not a good plan to drip water on the distributor. So what in the world were they thinking about when they ran this suction line over that thing so that it would get nice and cold and drip on the distributor? It doesn't give trouble on every vehicle, but it will on some of them. That's weak link number one. This is something you can always look for. Now, on some of your expeditions, like that one we got back there, we just put the sway bar links on. They've got the same doggone, well, they got a heater hose, not the suction line. There's over spark plug number 4 on the coil on plug, and it sometimes will drip. If that hose clamp isn't exactly tight, it may drip antifreeze in there, and it'll destroy that coil and fill that well up with water and all that.
If you had a problem with one of them right there, could you put like a piece of that pipe insulation around that?
Yeah, you could put press tape on it, and it would keep it from sweating, that black gummy tape, yeah. And you can get that stuff out of the rolls from the part time. Weak link number 2. Anybody recognize this?
So
I mean, you ever recognize that engine just from that little picture right there?
it looks like
Looks like, the one I have in the Dodge.
No, this is a Toyota Camry. And what is this part right here that's leaking so bad? That's the oil pump. And there's a little O-ring in there behind that. And when that O-ring gets all hard and starts cracking, it starts leaking really bad. And you would swear sometimes that it's a pan gasket that's leaking because it's dripping off of there. Seen that happen before where somebody got confused about that. All right, what is this right here we're looking at? Tell me what this is. Anybody know?
Fuel pump level sensor.
Yeah, fuel level sensors, and the ones on those, like 2000 and a couple of 3 years on either side of that, 2000 GM, that little fingers wear out where they drag across here, and the fuel gauge is notoriously inaccurate. And when you put the replacement one on there, the fingers are longer and they're less likely to wear. They're probably made out of different stuff too. But that is the, I don't know how many of those replaced, but you could buy that part right there by itself from the dealer and just change that without having to change the whole pump. But it costs about $140 the last time I bought one. But anyway, that's what you got. Your truck may have a lousy gas gauge because of that same nonsense.
That's what the computer read with the fuel level sensor.
Now, this right here, who knows what this is? Can somebody tell me what that is, just looking at it?
Looks like a fuse box.
No, it's not a fuse box.
That's a computer.
Where is it at?
It's on top of the steering column on the right side.
oh, it's an ignition switch on Ford.
The ignition switch on Ford, and what happened on those, when they started, some of them started coming apart like that. I took a picture of one when I was working at the dealer, and on some of their pickup trucks, that was a fire hazard. And this, one time the front end man had a F-150 that was pulled in there. We changed there were 8 million of those that had to be replaced. And I got where I could replace one of them just laying on the floor of the car there in about a minute and a half.
Correct.
You know, just throw it up in there, you know, and put, 11 millimeter nuts on it. But he had this red Ford pickup that was nearly brand new that switch had started coming apart on. He didn't know it. Pulled it up on a front end lift, had it up there, and he was there getting parts, for it to replace something. I don't know what it was. And it caught fire up in there, and there was a fire burning in the dash. It was just cracking the windshield and just destroying, just ruining everything. And it was because of that dadgum ignition switch. And they had another one where on 94 Explorers where they had the window switch, the mirror switch would go bad and set fire to the vehicle and burn it. This one guy got one. They bought one, went to the cell phone place to have a cell phone put in it, because back then that's when you had one put in your car instead of carrying it in your pocket. And he took it over there somewhere else, and the thing, while he was in his store, it caught fire and burned the thing to the wheels from the inside. And we thought maybe the cell phone provider did it, but Ford said no, that's a defect on that switch, and they gave him a new vehicle for it. So anyway, what's wrong with this picture here? I've showed it before.
On back.
These lugs are on backwards, and why in the world? This was on one of the state cars, and they had driven it like that for a while. I was doing an inspection here one Friday when nobody was here, and I popped the hubcaps off and said, I can't believe this, who put the lugs on backwards? Why people want to do that just boggles my mind. I do not remember a time in my life when I did not know which way lug nuts went on. Maybe there was a time, but I don't remember it. When I was a little bitty kid, I knew you put the lug nuts on. I was paying attention whenever Daddy was doing it. All right, right here, we got, what is that I'm looking at right there?
Gasket.
A gasket for,
Intake.
it's an intake for,
Chevy.
it's a Chevy, and that is all of these vehicles that have these plastic and silicone gaskets have a propensity over time, when they get old, those gaskets just disintegrate like that. And we had one that when you were pouring water in it, it was coming out from under the intake, pouring back out on the ground as fast as you were pouring it in. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's the picture I took of that particular one. Okay, that was weak link 5.5. All right, look at this one here. You're really gonna have fun with this one.
Break that.
No, that's what happens whenever you spill toner from your printer all over your desk. That's one of those worst case things. I got all this paperwork on my desk and toner goes everywhere. But you know what? That wasn't hard to clean up. All I had to do was take a vacuum cleaner and suck it off of there, and you could never tell it was there. It didn't stain anything. It is real fine black powder, you know, and it looked like gunpowder. Now this right here was a Kia Cephia. If somebody takes a Kia Cephia and they go past the recommended timing belt replace interval on one of them little 4-cylinder Kia Cephias, they are living on borrowed time. Because if that thing, when that thing jumps time, you're going to have valves hitting pistons. It's going to snap the heads off the valves. It's going to beat the crud out of the cylinder head and score the cylinder walls and bust a piston. You've bought an engine if you let a Kia Cephia, one of the little things, jump time. So this one here came in like that. And we had to we got a $500 replacement motor and popped it in there. But anytime you're putting a junkyard engine in one, or a salvage yard engine, you know, a lot of these salvage yard people don't like you to call it a junkyard. If you're going to do that, you need to, if it's got a timing belt on it, you need to replace the timing belt. You need to be looking at the rear main seal, and if you can, you need to crack the valve cover off or something to see if there's sludge in there. If it's loaded with sludge and you go to all the trouble to put it in there, and that sludge gets hot the first time they take a long trip, and it causes the oil pump to clog up with sludge, and then it starves the engine and it locks it up, you're going to be putting another motor in there. You know, now LKQ, I believe, gives you actually a labor clean time on it and all that. Weak link number 8, right here. Now this right here was a 2001 Pontiac Montana, and it had what appeared to be a fuel pump problem. It didn't have any fuel pressure. We go here, we take our Tesla, we hook it to the hot terminal, we go to the one that's in the relay going back to the pump, we don't see a ground. We kick the gas tank, we get a ground, like, oh, that's got to be a pump. So we go and pull the gas tank off, but what we pull out of there is a brand new fuel pump. Somebody's already replaced the fuel pump. Well, right in front of the gas tank, in the wheel well, in that Montana, is this doggone connector that feeds the fuel pump and the fuel gauge and all. And look at that chalky crap. Ain't no way, man. So what you got to do is you got to either try to find another connector, you got to clean all that stuff out of there, you got to find new terminals. That's aggravating to fix because it's hard to put that back exactly like it was supposed to be. That it was right there where the salt splash from the tire would get all over it and everything. That's not good for a while.
Why can't you just solder the wires together?
Well, you could, but that's I'm more about making it look like a factory fix instead of like somebody did it down home in the woods.
I was assassin.
Yeah, you could do it that way, and there are people that do it that way, but I'm always going to try to find the right connectors, even if I have to buy them from the, the flip chart with the connectors and all. I don't like, the only time I've ever done that is whenever like some of the Jeeps had a big wire connector where the engine was put in, and there was big trouble there, and the Jeep people, that actually the manufacturer, or did we just decide that was, well, the 89 model did away with that connector, and we would actually turn them into an 89 model by clipping that connector out and soldering all those wires together and heat shrinking them and taping them up so it would look like a factory 89 model. And a lot of the problems went away when we did that. This is weak link number 9. That one right there was a busted plastic fitting on a Buick. See that busted plastic fitting? Why in the world will they put hot coolant flowing through plastic? I have no idea. Doesn't even make any sense to me that you would have, and everybody has done that and had trouble, plastic, the Crown Victoria intake manifolds busting up there. I mean, that's an engine killer right there. It's almost like a planned obsolescence thing. Now I'm going to stop it. Huh?
The Chevrolet's got them on the heater hose.
Yeah, and some of them 3.8s has got 2 little L's going through the tensioner. This is the last slide. Weak link number 10 is the stripped out oil drain plug. How many of you know that when the oil drain plug in a metal oil pan is stripped out, the pan is not hurt and all you have to do is replace the oil drain plug? You don't have to get a self-tapping plug and screw the pan up. some people have assumed just because the oil plug looked like that, and of course, we had one of our young guys in here the other day that was turning the oil drain plug the wrong way, and it was turning around and around. When I saw that he had a cheater pipe